Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to go over some word problems with you guys where we have to model quantities with equations. So in the first problem here, we have a merchant that blends TA, and TA sells for $3 an ounce. And then we also have TB that sells for $2.75 an ounce. And we're producing 80 ounces of a mixture, and the mixture sells for $2.90 an ounce. So we're going to follow the steps below to determine how many ounces of each type of tea were used. So the first step is choose a variable to stand for the number of ounces of TA that were used. Let's just make this easy on ourselves and use A. Part B, how much would that many ounces of TA cost? Write an expression in terms of your variable. Okay, so if we're selling A ounces and it's $3 an ounce, then we're just going to multiply 3 times A. So the price per ounce times the number of ounces. Part C, how many ounces of TB were used in terms of your variable from A? So this means we're not going to assign a new variable like B. We're going to keep using the A variable. That makes it a little harder to say how much of TA we used. So we have to go back to the problem statement, and we're going to use this piece of information right here, that there were 80 ounces in the mixture. So the mixture came from TA and TB, and we already assigned A to stand for how much of TA we used. So the rest must be for TB. So this is going to be 80 minus A. Okay, so then for part D, we want to know how much would that many ounces of TB cost? And we're writing an expression in terms of the variable again. By the way, I keep saying expression here. This is so you don't accidentally write like an equation. So none of these things here are equations. These are expressions that we're going to then put into our equation later. Okay, anyway, so how much would that many ounces of TB cost? So looking back at TB, it sells for $2.75 an ounce. So we're just going to multiply the number of ounces, which is right here, times the cost per ounce, which is $2.75. Okay? So no matter how weird the expressions were, just pretend like you don't notice that they're weird and work with them the way you would work with actual numbers. But we do have to be a little bit careful here because 80 minus A, we need to protect that with parentheses so that that whole thing gets multiplied by 275. If we don't put the parentheses, then only the first part, the 80, would get multiplied by the 275. Okay, so now we're at the point that we can write an equation. So we're going to write an equation saying that the total cost of the 80-ounce mixture comes from the cost of TA and the cost of TB that are in the mixture. So basically, we're going to have the total cost of the mixture on one side, and then cost of TA and cost of TB on the other. We already know the cost of TA and TB because that's coming from these parts right here. Okay, so these are going to add together to give us the cost. So we're going to have 3A plus 275 times 80 minus A. And then on the other side, we need some other information. So let's go back to the description and see what else we can find here. Okay, so we already used that. 80 ounces of the mixture. Okay, look here what I found that we didn't use yet. The mixture sells for $2.90 an ounce, and we know that there's 80 ounces of it. So from that, we can figure out the total cost of the mixture, right? It's just 80 times $2.90. So then we can put that on the other side of our equation, because that's another way of writing the cost. Okay. All right, so here is our equation, and now we're ready to go ahead and solve it for A. So first, let's just copy it down here. Sorry, you might hear a little bit of thudding as I'm kind of trying to write with like a weird stylus set up here on my laptop. Okay, so I might elbow the laptop at some point. All right, 3A plus 275 times 80. I hope it's not making a bunch of weird noises. Minus A equals 80 times 290. Okay, so I'm going to distribute this 275 to the 80 and to negative A. So I need a calculator to figure out what this is. Let me pause and do that real quick. Okay, so this is 220, and then we're going to have minus 275 A. And then on the other side, I'm going to use the calculator again. So this is 232. All right, so now I need to group my A terms together. So 3A minus 275A, I think 3 minus 275 is 0.25. So this is 0.25A, and then I still have this plus 220. So on the next step, I'm going to subtract that from both sides. So I'm subtracting 220. Okay, so now I have 0.25A equals 32 minus 20 is 12. Okay, so now for the last step, I'm just going to divide, if I can find this roll bar, I'm going to divide both sides by 0.25. I think dividing by 0.25 is the same as, oops, I wanted to write that neatly, same as multiplying by 4, so this should be 48, I think. Let me go over here. Of course, you can use a calculator for that as well. Okay, so A is going to be 48. So now let's think about whether this answer makes sense or not, because this is telling us that we used 48 ounces of TA. Is this a sensical answer or is this nonsensical? So let me look back at the problem. Right, the total mixture is 80 ounces, so for one of the T's to be 48, like, yeah, it could be 48. If you got like 100 or something, then it's completely, or if you get a negative number or something, then like it's completely wrong. Something went wrong. Okay, so this is saying TA, we used 48 ounces. OZ is the abbreviation for ounce. And then for TB, remember TB is the rest of that 80 ounces. So it's going to be 80 minus 48, which I think is going to be 32 ounces. So you can just subtract 80 minus 48. Okay, that's that problem. Let's look at the next one.